HMS Duncan was a D-class destroyer leader built for the Royal Navy in the early 1930s. The ship was initially assigned to the Mediterranean Fleet before she was transferred to the China Station in early 1935, where she remained until mid-1939. Duncan returned to the Mediterranean Fleet just after World War II began in September 1939. She was transferred to the Home Fleet in December 1939, although she was badly damaged in a collision the following month, and required repairs that lasted until July 1940. The ship joined Force H at Gibraltar in October, escorting the largest ships and various convoys until March 1941, when she was transferred to West Africa for convoy escort duties for a few months. Duncan rejoined the 13th Destroyer Flotilla at Gibraltar in July and escorted several convoys to Malta during the rest of the year. After a refit, she briefly returned to the 13th Destroyer Flotilla before joining the Eastern Fleet in the Indian Ocean to participate in Operation Ironclad in May 1942. The ship was recalled home to be converted into an escort destroyer in late 1942. Duncan was assigned to escort Group B-7 in the North Atlantic after her conversion was complete in May 1943. She escorted a number of convoys before she required a lengthy refit from November to May 1944. She helped to sink 2 German submarines in October 1943. The ship was assigned to anti-submarine duties in the western approaches after her refit was finished in May 1944, and Duncan remained there until April 1945. At the time she was transferred to coastal anti-submarine patrols to counter any last-gasp effort by the Kriegsmarine to interfere with the Allied supply lines to the continent. Placed in reserve the following month, Duncan was in bad shape and was sold for scrap later that year. The demolition, however, was not completed until 1949. Design and construction. Duncan displaced 1,400 long tons at standard load. The ship had an overall length of 329 feet, a beam of 33 feet and a draft of 12 feet 6 inches. She was powered by Parsons-geared steam turbines, driving 2 shafts, which developed a total of 36,000 shaft horsepower and gave a maximum speed of 36 knots. Steam for the turbines was provided by 3 Admiralty 3-drum boilers. Duncan carried a maximum of 390 long tons of fuel oil that gave her a range of 5,870 nautical miles at 15 knots. The ship's complement was 175 officers and men. The ship mounted 445 caliber 4.7-inch MKIX guns in single mounts designated A, B, X, and Y from front to rear. For anti-aircraft defense, Duncan had a single 12-pounder AA gun between her funnels and 2 quadruple Mark I mounts for the QF 0.5-inch Vickers Mark III machine guns mounted on the sides of her bridge. She was fitted with 2 above-water quadruple torpedo tube mounts for 21-inch torpedoes. 1 depth charge rail and 2 throwers were fitted. 20 depth charges were originally carried, but this increased to 35 shortly after the war began. In 1936, the 12-pounder was replaced by 2 QF 2-pounder Mk2 AA guns. Sometime after the Dunkirk evacuation, the ship's rear torpedo tube mount was removed and replaced by a 12-pounder AA gun, and the quadruple 0.5-inch machine guns were replaced by 20mm Oerlikon AA guns. Duncan was ordered under the 1930 naval estimates on the 2nd of February 1931 from Portsmouth Dockyard. She was laid down on the 25th of September 1931, launched on the 7th of July 1932, and finally commissioned into the Navy on the 31st of March 1933. Built as a flotilla leader, she displaced 25 long tons more than the rest of her class and carried an extra 30 personnel. These personnel formed the staff of the captain of the flotilla. Career. The ship was initially assigned as the leader of the 1st Destroyer Flotilla in the Mediterranean and made a brief deployment to the Persian Gulf and Red Sea in September to November 1933. After refitting her at Portsmouth between the 3rd of September and the 23rd of October, Duncan led most of her flotilla to the China Station, arriving at Hong Kong on the 3rd of January 1935. The next few years were spent showing the flag around the Far East and visiting Japan, the Philippines, the Dutch East Indies, Singapore, Thailand and Malaya. The ship was under repairs between the 14th of December 1936 and the 4th of January 1937 from damage sustained when testing refueling at sea techniques. She was in Shanghai during the Japanese invasion of 1937 and evacuated British civilians to Wusong, together with the sloop HMS Falmouth. On the 28th of October 1938, Duncan was struck by the Greek steamer Pipina whilst lying at anchor at Fuzhou, China. The ship was repaired and given a refit at Hong Kong between the 31st of October and the 14th of January 1939. She was lightly damaged when struck by a high-speed target at Weihai Wei, China in July 1939. World War II. With the outbreak of war, Duncan and her sisters Diana, Daring, and Dainty were transferred to the Mediterranean Fleet, arriving at Alexandria on the 30th of September. All the ships were in poor condition, and after repair, they conducted contraband control duties. In December, Duncan, along with her sister Duchess, was assigned to escort the battleship Barham back to the UK, and they departed Gibraltar on the 6th of December. During the morning of the 10th of December, Barham collided with Duchess off the Mull of Kintyre in heavy fog, sinking the destroyer with the loss of 124 lives. Duncan was assigned to the 3rd Destroyer Flotilla of the Home Fleet on the 12th of December. She was damaged in a collision with a merchant vessel on the 17th of January whilst escorting convoy ON-18, causing a 20-foot hole in her side, but fortunately she did not sink and was taken under tow. After temporary repairs at Invergordon, she was towed to Grangemouth for repairs that were not completed until the 22nd of July. She carried out post-refit trials and returned to Scapa Flow to rejoin the 3rd Destroyer Flotilla. She transferred to the 13th Destroyer Flotilla based at Gibraltar in October, escorting the aircraft carrier Ark Royal, Barham, the heavy cruiser Berwick, and the light cruisers Glasgow and Sheffield from the Firth of Clyde to Gibraltar. Joining Force H, she escorted Ark Royal during Operation Coat, the carrier Argo when she flew off Hawker Hurricane fighters to Malta during Operation White, and escorted Force F to Malta during Collar during November. During the Battle of Cape Spartivento in late November, Duncan was detailed to escort the convoy away from the Italians. On the 1st of January 1941, she led 4 ships of the 13th Destroyer Flotilla as they intercepted a Vichy French convoy near Melilla and seized all 4 merchant ships of the Convoy. A few days later she took part in Operation Excess, a military convoy taking stores to Piraeus and Alexandria. During Operation Grog in early February, the ship escorted the larger ships of Force H as they bombarded Genoa. She then escorted the battle cruiser Repulse and the carrier Furious from Gibraltar to West Africa in early March and remained there afterwards. Based at Freetown, the ship escorted convoys through West African waters until July, when she was recalled to the Mediterranean to escort the Operation Substance convoy from Gibraltar to Malta in July 1941, reassigned to the 13th Destroyer Flotilla. Duncan remained at Gibraltar and was part of the close escort for the Operation Halberd convoy in late September. In October she was assigned as part of the escort for convoy HG-75 from Gibraltar to Liverpool, because she was scheduled for a refit in the Sheerness dockyard. It began on the 16th of November and lasted until the 23rd of January 1942, after which Duncan rejoined the 13th Destroyer Flotilla at Gibraltar. In late February and March the ship escorted the carriers Eagle and Argus as they flew off fighters for Malta. The following month, Duncan was transferred to the 22nd Destroyer Flotilla of the Eastern Fleet to support Operation Ironclad, the invasion of Diego Suarez. After 4 months of operations in the Indian Ocean, the Admiralty decided to convert her to an escort destroyer, and accordingly she returned to the United Kingdom via the Cape of Good Hope as an escort for the battleship Royal Sovereign. The ship arrived in Greenock on the 16th of November, but did not begin her conversion at Tilbury until the 24th of November. This involved the replacement of a gun by Hedgehog anti-submarine spigot mortar, the removal of her direct control tower and rangefinder above the bridge in exchange for a Type 271 target indication radar, exchanging her two 2-pounder AA guns mounted between her funnels for two Oerlikon 20mm AA guns, the addition of two Oerlikon guns to her searchlight platform, and the removal of her 12-pounder AA gun. Y gun was also removed to allow her depth charge stage to be increased to 98 depth charges. In March 1943, Duncan carried out sea trials and went to Tobermory to work up. In April she joined Escort Group B7 as the senior officer's ship, with Commander Peter Gretton in command at the height of the Battle of the Atlantic. She escorted Convoy ONS 5 in early May, a major convoy battle which saw the destruction of 6 U-boats for the loss of 13 ships. Although Duncan was forced to withdraw for lack of fuel before the battle was over, later that month, she escorted Convoy SC-130, in which 3 U-boats were destroyed for the loss of no ships. Duncan continued on North Atlantic escort duty until October 1943. On the 16th of October the ship rescued 15 survivors from U-470 which had been sunk earlier by an consolidated B-24 Liberator bomber of the Royal Air Force, whilst defending Convoy ON 207 on the 23rd of October. Duncan, together with the destroyer Vidit and a Liberator of No. 224 Squadron RAF, sank U-274. Later the same month, on the 29th of October, Duncan shared the sinking of U-282 with Vidit and the corvette Sunflower whilst protecting Convoy ON 208. By this time the ship was in poor shape and required an extensive refit. The work lasted from the 12th of November to the 17th of May 1944 at the North Woolwich, London shipyard of Harland and Wolff. After working up, she was assigned to the 14th Escort Group for anti-submarine operations in the western approaches. Duncan conducted convoy escort and anti-submarine operations with the group through April 1945, when she was assigned to the Greenock Coastal Escort. The ship was placed in reserve on the 13th of May and was transferred to Barrow on the 9th of June. She approved for immediate disposal on the 8th of July as she was leaking 5 tons of water a day. Duncan was turned over to BISCO for scrapping immediately afterwards, but demolition was not completed until 1949.